You're listening to the Death Rattle Crew, a Hearthstone podcast.
DRC, and welcome to the very first episode of the Death Rattle Crew, a podcast dedicated to Hearthstone, the Heroes of Warcraft. I am one of your many hosts, Mike Tac2 Hearn. Let me go ahead and give you an overlook of what we are. We're interested in everything competitive Hearthstone, from the ladder, constructed ladder, to the tournament scene. Anything involved in the meta, we want to talk about. We have two segments lined up for this podcast in particular. First is Meta Anatomy. We'll take and dissect both the ladder and the tournament scene. What has come in, what's gone out, what we think is going to come in the future. So you'll get our take on that. And then for those of you looking for a little more, a second segment is Deck of the Week. There we'll take one deck specific to the meta, dissect it, and give you our take on it. Maybe it's you're having a little problems with that pesky mech mage. You want to learn how to play it better. This is the segment you really want to listen to. Besides that, we have a lot planned for the future. We have an upcoming live segment. More information on that later. Something I'm really looking forward to is having guests on the show, so stay tuned for that. And besides that, we have a few other things planned for the future. I'm not going to spoil anything yet, but definitely we have a lot coming up. And lastly, this really won't affect you if you're listening to the audio-only format of this show. But if you're watching the video format of this show, let me go ahead and apologize ahead of time. In the future, for the video-only format, we plan on having overlays, webcams of the hosts, and several other things. They're not going to be here in this first episode, and maybe the first few other episodes, but they will be coming. So for those of you watching the video format, please pardon our dust. We're going to have a polished version of this soon. But until then, all the content is here. Very, very happy and excited about this first episode. Turned out great. And I promise a polished product in the future, but the content's here and that's really what matters. So please enjoy it. Okay, so with this long intro out of the way, from me and the rest of the DRC team, welcome to the crew. Enjoy. Welcome to Meta Anatomy, your one-stop for everything meta in Hearthstone. I'm joined today by Matt Mushu Hill and Ton Just Soup Jessup.
Hello.
All right, so we're at an interesting point in the meta right now. We're at the end of a season, basically. By the time this comes out, the new season should be started. But how do we feel about last month, this whole season? Matt, I'll start with you.
Well, it's like I didn't play a huge amount of games this month, but it's been like I often draw my comparisons to, say, when Miracle Rogue was on top, and it was like quite clear that everyone was playing Miracle Rogue. As far as that goes, it was pretty balanced. Like obviously, I saw a pretty big surge in pallies. Like I went from sort of like an 8% seeing pallies and playing against them to it's like a 17% or something. So that's
wow.
Like that. It's double, but like obviously it's sort of I wouldn't like bank for these results. It's like 60 or 70 games. It's not a huge amount.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just more pallies.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of pally, like different pally decks too. I went pretty quickly through the first about 10 ranks, and then when I got to around 12 is when people started playing more tier decks. I started seeing that's when I started seeing like Control Warrior a lot more. I started seeing the Hunter decks and specifically Pally. And I hadn't really seen I've seen Pally before obviously, but I haven't seen it like with the surge of Quartermaster and Muster for Battle. It's just those really like neat synergies and combos. Like I've seen aggro decks with that, I've seen mid-range decks with that, and I've even seen control decks with that. And all of them are pretty damn solid.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'd say that the aggro one is pretty like trash, just because even like with the
budget, I mean,
with the addition of things like Jeeves and stuff, and even with Divine Favor, I still don't think that it's consistent enough. Like the one that I played a lot was the Control Pally, and like Muster for Battle makes it so much fun, and the 2-drop that has the Divine Shield, that's
Shielded Minibot. That is such a strong card.
It's like to restate the obvious. Obviously, GVG has smoothed out the Pally curve, and that's like makes it so much more fun. And as you say, you get these other archetypes. But I think Control Pally is definitely still like where it's at. It's still the top tier of the Paladin decks.
Yes.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a blur between Control Pally and Mid-Range Pally because they're similar decks in the way that they're built. But it seems to me that the way they play is slightly different in that Mid-Range Pally is gonna use their creatures to trade more, whereas Control Pally is gonna probably, like, from what I've seen, is gonna hit to the face, it looks like, a lot with some things and use their spells more to clear stuff up. But I haven't played up against a lot of Control Pally. It's mainly been Mid-Range Pally. And I think, because the reason I know that is because a lot of people are just playing lots of really, really big, good, solid creatures. And as a hunter player, we can get into later, it really sucks for me because it's just the worst matchup in the world.
So my question to you is, what defines a mid-range pally versus a control pally? Because, like, I've got this I guess template of control pally where you have, your I'll look at my list at the moment. It's like it's essentially copy pasted Firebat from a couple of weeks ago, and it's like, you have about 9 2-drops, and then so it's about 8 3 to 4 drops and 7 5-drops, and sort of like 4 7+ drops. So would that would be considered a control pally, I think.
I would agree for the most part. It seems to me that the mid-range. Ooh, that's not what I'm looking for. The mid-range pally is very. It seems a little more aggressive to me, honestly. Like the way Control Pally works is it use more very blatantly control-y cards and synergies like Wild Pyromancer and Equality, or Wild Pyromancer and Consecration, or Consecration Equality, stuff like that. And I don't think, not a lot of the lists I've seen have run Wild Pyromancer in mid-range Pally. And not that that's like the end-all be-all to the difference, but that's one of the big differences I've seen is just Wild Pyromancer has so many good synergies. And
with a Paladin, oh, definitely.
Well, right, absolutely.
I mean, with several other cards, but especially a Paladin, yes.
The mid-range Pally, it seems, runs a little more legendaries too, and their legendaries are slightly different. Obviously, Dr. Boom is in both lists because he's really, really good right now.
Yeah.
And I've seen people run Black Knight in both, and Tyrion.
Of course.
Yeah. Tyrion's just so
Pally
good.
deck without Tyrion.
So annoying. But yeah, like the main difference, it looks like to me, is pretty much the playstyle. Like, mid-range Paladin is looking to play more trades. So they're okay with playing cards like Zombie Chow and Shielded Minibot and Aldor Peacekeeper. Like, they're going to control with their creatures rather than with their spells, which was, Control Paladin. That's kind of like what you would do in an archetype type deck. You're going to be, if you're playing a mid-range deck, it tends to be a fairer, quote-unquote, deck because you're not playing cards from your hand to kill things. Your opponent already knows what you have most of the time. That's the whole thing about control, is that you want to make sure your opponent doesn't really know what you have, kind of. And you want to be able to
have 9 cards
play against a lot of things. Right, yeah.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
That's my opinion, obviously. As you don't have to take that to canon, but
we'll post this as the rules. This is the difference between control and mid-range pally.
It's set in stone, and so it shall be.
And if you don't, then you're wrong. So
you heard it here first. I actually, because this version that I was running has both Muster for Battle and Pyromancer in it, and actually, being one to question mechanics sometimes purposely, sometimes unintentionally, I for some reason I got it into my brain that the deal 1 damage to all minions would resolve before Muster resolved.
Yeah,
I was mistaken, and it's just sort of like, well, Do I concede now, or do I just try and save face, or do I just play it out? So I played it out.
That was well played.
Right.
It's like, well, I am sorry. It's like today when I was playing and he killed a Sneed Shredder and he dropped a Thanos. It's just like, sorry about that.
Yeah.
It's just one of those moments when you just sort of cry. So yeah, what anything else that really sticks out about the meta? It's just these. Yeah, I've just seen
Hunter and the evolution of Hunter right now, because
yeah, that's something.
People have been talking. A lot of people have been talking about the face Hunter, and I'm okay with aggro. Like, I think aggro is a fine thing to have in the archetype, in the meta. But face Hunter for the archetype is kind of a really cancerous deck. And with the Undertaker nerf, I think it doesn't make Undertaker unplayable by any means, but it definitely really hinders the ability of face Hunter.
Yeah,
it kind of needed to happen, because that deck
does
was
it?
kind of
like I understand that the nerf to Undertaker definitely hinders it, but I think it brings it much more into like a fair scenario. It's like it's not just going to grow, but I don't think it tackles sort of like Hunter's like the fundamental problem playing against face Hunter, which is you're burning. They're burning you the entire time. That's really the problem with it.
It's a burn deck. It's what it is. Yeah, it's you run everything to the face and hope to God it doesn't die. And if it does, you take more things and run that to the face. And you play your hero power all the time.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a couple things. I mean, the Undertaker nerf, I think it needed to happen, not just for Hunter.
It really did.
For a couple other classes, too. My main problem with Undertaker is when it was played early. You had to have an answer for it. If you didn't have an answer for it, I mean,
it's out of control.
Yeah, you might as well wait until you pull your big game Hunter.
Yeah.
But my other problem with it is if you have to use an answer for it. So that is burning, generally sometimes you just played whatever you had in your hand. If you had something to burn it with, even if you felt like, man, this is such a waste of a removal card, if you didn't use it, you might as well just, conceded the game right there.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
Now I don't feel like you have to do that since it's life. And that was my biggest problem with it, is its life total went up.
It sounds like you're being too greedy. Like I don't see I don't personally see the problem with needing to say pop your Frostbolt on turn to kill an Undertaker, because of that very reasoning that if I don't take this out now, it's gonna spread like it's gonna grow like cancer and just wreck you.
Well, my thing is because Hunter, even face Hunters, they'll use a smart one. They'll use their minions and trade correctly. A good one. Now, it's not just. I'm not going to say face Hunter is just all face, but it's mostly just face.
It really is.
But the other problem is Hunters. They're kind of pigeonholed into being an aggro deck with their hero ability.
Right.
I mean, now that they've got what is that? I'm going to look it up real quick here. What card is that? The Steel Needle Sniper. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's unfortunately it takes up one or two card spaces to play this card, and then you have to hope that you pull it so that you can use your hero ability as a ping. So it's kind of. Go ahead. What do you think?
I like the comparison drawn. I think would be Shadow Form.
Yes, right.
And
perfect.
I think it's arguably better than Shadow Form. Depends where you want to sit on that argument, in that you get the body, but obviously by having the body, they can take it away. And I can guarantee you the majority of the time, the next turn, it's being taken away.
Yeah,
you're going to...
It's 3 health. It's too easy to kill. Yeah.
And I think people have been trying to make that Hunter control deck. And honestly, I think it revolves too much around getting the right cards, when you can just play a deck like Mid-Range Hunter, which is debatably one of the best decks right now.
Yeah.
Well, it is one of the best, debatably the best. And running control Hunter-y cards, it's almost like playing just a bad Mid-Range Hunter. It's like it's more expensive dust-wise, and it's less effective from what I've seen.
Right. And you're using secrets as well. And the problem with secrets is you don't always pull the one that you want. and secrets rely on your opponent's choices. So
Right.
you don't get to choose when you remove or when you do something to a minion.
And the thing about secrets with like mid-range hunter is mid-range hunter doesn't run a lot of secrets too.
Mm-hmm.
It runs snake trap and freezing trap. And in my list, I don't have snake trap, so I decided to run explosive trap because I have 2 mad scientists, and it's a decent body and it buffs my undertaker and whatever, and it's got good abilities. But and it works. But these traps, you don't want to overextend on playing like a lot of traps in your deck because obviously, like you just said, you're gonna play against people who are obviously going to be smart and know what you're playing, traps wise and know meta wise what deck you have and know your list.
Yeah.
And traps become slightly less effective then because the whole point of traps is what the hell am I playing up against?
Yeah.
What am I going to do? Is that an explosive trap or not? And I've been pigeonholed into a lot of situations where I needed to know what trap it was or else I was going to lose. Mm-hmm. But that's situations like that make a deck good. But you don't want to run a lot of those because when they see that you're running just a bunch of traps, then you lose a lot of effectiveness of those traps, like secret wise. Like he played 2 freezing traps and he just played another trap. That's probably a snake trap or an explosive trap.
Right.
But so I understand what you're saying, but like there's no way to get around that. Like I think that's supposed to be the limit of the class is that there are
it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. I'm just saying like that's the thing you got to worry about when playing a lot of traps.
The amount of hunter I actually played, it was sort of like I think I had 2 freezing, an explosive, and a snake trap. And this was like during the peak of, I guess, when aggro was king with warlock or with the zoo and this face hunter at the top. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I never felt like while they obviously knew what was coming, it still feels like it's fair because it's still valuable because they have to play around the free trap.
Yes,
and like obviously the best way to I sort of figured out. Well, this is what I would think is the best way to figure out which trap it is to take like your second best minion on the board and just hit face because that'll tell you straight away what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and like so. If it doesn't go off, obviously it's either snake trap or snipe, like to be like to cover all bases. And if it goes off, it's going to either be freezing trap, explosive trap, or even misdirection. And that's the easiest way to get around it. Obviously, I think
I haven't even seen a lot of misdirection really. I saw a tiny bit of snipe when I was playing up against Control Hunter, and like I said, I don't really care for it.
That's where like the whole secrets thing is like it definitely. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and it's like you by having all those traps in the meta is sort of like definitely devalues it because it becomes easier to solve, and that's where like sort of one of the mage decks I tried was on the front page of Hearthporn the other day. It was like Kalento's mirror image version. Where the idea was it's very sort of aggro heavy, and you drop a mirror entity, and that's it. And you've got your 2 scientists.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of the like Echo Mage decks have been running like duplicate and mirror entity, and then Fatigue Mage runs duplicate counterspell. If I'm correct, I think it runs like a 1 of counterspell and a 1 of mirror entity. And the thing I really like about Mage Secrets is that I feel like there's a little bit more variance in that because you have to do a bunch of different things. Like if you hit to the face and it procs and it's like, okay, it's either vaporize or it's ice block or ice barrier. And then if I have to play a spell to figure out if it's counterspell, or I have to kill a creature to figure out if it's duplicate, or I have to play a creature to figure out if it's mirror entity. Like there's much more variance in secrets for mages. And also speaking of secrets, when playing my mid-range hunter, I was running 2 Piloted Shredder, the 4/3 Death Rattle for 4. And I was running 2 of them, and I noticed I was going into a lot of mages and hunters who were running lots of secrets. And I was like, it's just really hurting. And I was looking around at, like, what can I do to counter secrets? And I looked at Flare, and I was like, I don't want to run you like so bad, but I
Right.
might have to. And then I found Kezon Mystic, which
I was
is
gonna say as
Yeah.
a Mystic would be
yeah,
good.
Yeah.
it's the same body as that as the Pilot Shredder, and it's obviously not the same thing, but same body, same cost, but it has blown out games. I've had two very recent situations where I've stolen a mage's secret and they've immediately conceded.
Mm-hmm.
It was phenomenal, and I'm glad that Kezon Mystic works the way it does because its battle cry effect happens before anything happens with the secret. So
Yeah.
like if they play Mirror Entity,
Yeah, that'd be
You
unfair
are-
otherwise.
Oh yeah, completely.
or
Hey.
Snipe, same thing with Snipe.
Yeah, Kazan Mystic's one of those cards. It's kind of like BGH or
Yeah, it's a meta call.
Yeah, it
Absolutely.
is absolutely, and it's
It's not
garbage.
something-
It's garbage unless you can use it for its purpose.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And when and when
Yes.
you use it, oh god, it's so good.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it feels so great to like have to be like perfect situation to coin it out turn 3 and steal a phenomenal secret.
Yeah.
Like it's a giant middle finger to the other player, and
Oh,
it
yeah.
feels great to play.
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
Obviously not perfect to play at every rank, but when you start getting up in ranks and people start playing these secrets and you notice it, dust some cards and make that card because it's like only helps you.
Yeah.
At least if you're running a type of deck where you can run that kind of body. So
yeah. This would be like a sideboard card if we had sideboards.
right,
Definitely.
absolutely, yeah.
But I think this is sort of why we don't have sideboards.
Yeah, right.
Because how brutal would that be? It's like, sideboard, it's like a guaranteed win, I guess, sort of thing.
Right.
Like well, not guaranteed, obviously. You rely on drawing it.
Warrior had sideboards. That'd be disgusting. That's also one of the best decks right now also is Control Warrior. And
Yeah.
which we were talking earlier about like how much I hate Control Warrior and how much you hate Face Hunter. Ugh.
Tell us about your hate for the Control
Oh my
Warrior.
God.
Go on.
Let me tell you about my
unwarranted
freaking
hate.
Warrior. So here's the one thing that is totally just off the wall stupid is people who play tier 1 phenomenally built like all the like 17 and a half legendaries in Control Warrior and you go playing casual. Like if you're that person, seriously uninstall. That's you're a terrible human being. Cuz I'm just trying to get my quests done and you're being a total douche. But the one thing like it's obviously we need a hard control deck in the meta. I don't think it's a super cancerous deck whereas Face Hunter is. But it really sucks to play against because when I was playing aggro lock like Zulok and when I had to play Face Hunter because that was my only deck, and even playing mid-range Hunter, like it's just like one of my hardest matchups because it's like, okay, well I have to play the way I normally play and trade well and I have to hope to God he doesn't get good cards because the Control Warrior gets good cards and plays them decently, just even decently, I lose. It's so bullshit. And then at the end of the game, if I haven't killed him by turn 9, he's like, oh, Alex Straza, by the way, I have 27 armor and anti-kill bot, and here's my Baron Geddon, so all of your small minions die and all of your other minions die in a next turn, and Ragnaros, and it's going to hit you in the face.
Well,
straight.
and that's part of it too. It kind of depends on because there's a couple different. When I say builds, it's not really a different build, but of Control Warrior because really it comes down to what few minions do you trade out.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
Baron Geddon. Like if you're playing Baron Geddon, then you're not playing something else.
Yeah, it definitely becomes like you said, it's not really a build change. It's definitely there's this set in stone sort of archetype of like it's a derivative of the Kit Kat's warrior, and then people make switches how they feel. Like I think one of the big things coming into back when Nax was released was swapping out the whirlwind because you didn't, or like dropping down to 1 or even no whirlwinds because of Death's Bite and just
Yes.
playing around that.
Yeah.
But like one of the things that I critique about your hate for for the Control Warrior is like the role of perspective memory in Hearthstone, but that's something we can get into another time. Just sort of how like all these like your pitch, your it's all about all these worst case scenarios where I think like as a zoo player, there's been several times I've just ran over a Control Warrior because they don't get their their Fiery War Axe turn 1, and it just sort of becomes late, and then you build that sort of brawl pressure by playing your Nerubian Eggs and your Haunted Creepers and stuff. So even if they do it, you still come out ahead, and it's sort of like you can't you just have to like disrupt the way they want to play. You have to play your game, I guess, and just play it faster. But I definitely take the point of it's like a high-end deck, and I don't think that's not necessarily bad for a card game. I think you'd be lying to yourself if you tried to say there was a card game that didn't have this deck, where it's like quote unquote pay to win deck. But with this pay to win sort of mindset comes a very sort of heavy skill set, because you've got to time your brawl. You need to time your Alexstrasza. Dropping Grommy Hellscream to trade is like, if you do that, you'll basically lose because you don't have a finisher. And it's like these sort of things where it comes with the territory. It's a expensive deck, but it's also hard to play.
It's a very tuned deck, because
I'm not saying it doesn't take skill.
No,
I'm just saying it's really obnoxious.
Well, and if you play against a warrior that is set to play against other control decks, they're probably not running Baron. Baron's still a good card and it'll still work, but maybe they don't have a Sylvanas.
Well, yeah, with the death of sort of aggro, I haven't seen that much control, or maybe I've seen it like 5 times. So that's not like a lot of times. I think. Hang on, we'll look at my win ratio against the control warrior in general. All right. It has. Well, I seem to have been spanked by it.
Yeah,
I think I got
because it's freaking good, and I hate it.
Well, I think the last couple of weeks have really changed because we've seen a lot of paladins and a lot of druids. So I think
the two like, I wouldn't say like hard counters, but like really really good decks against control warrior, and obviously they hit rank 1 because there's a lot of control warrior players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's making your control warriors play more, Black Knights. And so again, because of the deck size is limited, when these meta changes happen, obviously the whole thing about the meta is trying to countering it. Now's the time, I think, that the smaller, not necessarily aggro decks, but cheaper decks are going to be better. Because, when everything's Face Hunter, when everything's Zoo, when everything's Mech Mage-ish, I'm going to tune my deck for that. I'm going to put my Barons in. I'm probably not going to play Black Knight. I want to be able to have answers. I remember when Hogger was the thing a couple weeks back.
That was a weird week.
It was extremely weird because that was one where it's like, I remember months ago, Hogger's horrible, and then all of a sudden you see everybody playing Hogger.
Someone won some tournament with it because it was like a meta call, and then everybody plays it.
Yeah, and it was only thing for like a week.
That's just how it is, though.
Yeah, it is absolutely, and that's Control Warrior isn't necessarily the best deck. It's not. I think it's a solid deck, and I think it has a lot of answers to a lot of things if it's tuned.
Yeah, I mean that's the nature of the deck. I'd say it's a control deck. It's the closest thing we're going to get to like a pure control deck right now. So it's supposed to have these answers, and that's the frustrating thing about it. Anybody who plays against it, who's playing a more fair deck, by definition, is just going to get really frustrated. Except for maybe like Ramp Druid, because Ramp Druid, I haven't played Ramp Druid, but I've watched a lot of people playing Ramp Druid, and it just looks like Ramp Druid just says, "All right, I'm just going to play really big and efficient as hell creatures, and you have to bring it on." And I'm going to play them really, really quick. That's a huge thing about Ramp Druid. And I think Ramp Druid's that other, like the last tier 1 deck, that's just really, really solid. It's really fair, and it's really, it's obnoxious to play against as a hunter, but I can't hate it too much because there's really nothing it's doing that is super crazy. It's just a really solid deck, a lot of really fair creatures. Like you're playing autopilot druid, right?
Yeah.
It's I haven't actually seen that list, but it sounds really cool and it sounds similar. Probably more aggressive.
It's good fun. It's good fun. It's really sort of like the shit thing about it is like if you don't hit like those piloted shredders on curve, it's a little bit a little bit and crap. And like as I was saying to you before, like running this was like the meta call of like running 2 mind controlled techs and 2 BGHs, and it just felt wasteful as shit because there was so many times where it's like I had them just sitting in my hand and it was sort of like this is, I guess, a knee-jerk reaction to things. And I think one thing we need to put in perspective for anybody who's relatively new for Hearthstone listening is while we may talk about like these big, classes just smash other classes, if you like head over to her stats and have a look at like the global win rates for a month, and you see like, I think looking at it, it's a little bit behind at the moment. Something got updated for October last year, but the biggest edge a class has on another class is like Hunter had just over a 10% edge on Mage, meaning they won 60% of the games in that month in constructed versus Hunter versus Mage. And so like a lot of these times, these edges we're talking about are like between like 2 and 5%. That's the Hunter one's obviously pretty big, but it's just sort of, this was pre-GVG. But yeah, sort of while we talk about these things countering other things, a lot of the time it could go either way, such as, the nature of Hearthstone. But this is obviously on ladder, and tournament play becomes a lot more interesting when you can have counters and such.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't know if you guys have played a lot of tournaments, particularly recently. It's
I played
it's much fun.
I played a little dinky one on. I think I told you guys about this. I played a little dinky one on Twitch. Found some guys who were just screwed around. It was really cool. I can't remember their names, and I would totally recommend them because they were really nice guys. And it was totally just like, it seemed like these guys were just like, hey, we have like 200 viewers. Let's put together a tournament, and they did, and attracted a decent crowd. Like I think at one point there was like 500 viewers, and I want to say probably like 18 players in the tournament. Okay. And it was really fun. It was only like paid out to first and second place, and like the first place got like $50 Blizzard card, and second place got $20 Blizzard card or something like that. And like my first game was up against so actually pretty cool. My first game, it was a really cool snapshot of the meta. My first game was up against a legendary, he was in Legend NA, and I was like, well, crap, this is going to be really quick for me. And it was single elim, and so I played aggro lock because that was the best deck I felt like I had.
Sweep.
And I played, what did he have? Ramp Druid, I'm pretty sure. And I was like, I don't know how my matchup is going to be here, but I ended up winning. I just traded better, and I was like, okay, that's cool. So I went on to the next game, played again. I think I played Mech Mage and lost, and then I went back to Agrolock and beat him again, and he played a Paladin deck or something like that. And so that was like my first game ever in like a quote-unquote tournament, and I was like, this is awesome. That was so much fun. Ready to go into the next game, and I beat my next opponent who was playing first time I'd ever seen mid-range Hunter, and so I got really, really smacked in the face with the meta in this first tournament, and I had very, very little idea what I was doing. So Ramp Druid and mid-range Pally, and then mid-range Hunter, and then right before, because it was a really casual tournament, we didn't really have to submit decks. Right before the semifinals, I made mid-range Hunter and looked it up, played it, and played a guy who was number 8 legend in EU, and he just wiped the floor with me with it was either Control Pally or Control Warrior, and then Fatigue Mage. Okay. That wasn't the first time I'd seen Fatigue Mage, but I didn't know what he was doing until I knew it was happening. And I was like, I'm done. Oh God, all of my cards. Oh Jesus.
Is that where they duplicate things like Antique Healbot and just
Antique Healbot, Cold Light Oracle,
it's one of the. It's just like one of those games. It's one of those games where it's just like you're like a fish in the ocean who's just bitten onto a hook. You know, you think you can get away. You think you can, swallow the bait and just swim on. And you keep fighting for it because you always think you're going to win. But then eventually, they reel you in and just...
It's that one top deck.
You just cooked. So this tournament, so you said in the first round you switched to Mech Mage in the second game. Does that mean you didn't have to keep the same deck for the second round?
Right. The rules were it was a best 2 out of 3, and it wasn't like normal tournaments where you pick 3 decks, submit them, and they're like, all right, here's the brackets, and you play, whatever. They just had a bracket system, and they were like, hey, add these people on BNet, go play them, and then tell us what your record was. And if there's any disputes, or you think there's going to be a dispute, just take a picture of your wins just to be safe. And so that was fine. Nobody really had a problem. But yeah, it was, you just play whatever deck you wanted. And it was really fun.
Those kind of, I think I've been in a situation like that before. I played a format like that, and I zooed him the first game, and then I was thinking about what to play in the second game, because this is when the winner can switch decks. It's like, oh yeah, and I was like, oh my god, he's going to switch to Control Warrior. So if I switch to something that counters Control Warrior, then I'll be good. And I was like, hang on, am I thinking too far ahead? It's like, is he going to put this much thought into it? Because this was like, yeah, as you say, a pretty casual tournament. Mm-hmm. And I was like, no, it'll be fine. I'll just play Zoo again. And he plays Control Warrior. I'm just like,
damn
which
it.
Is, actually, no, I think I did make a switch, but it wasn't good. Basically, I remember finishing that round being like, this is so dumb. It's like, why is the winner allowed to switch sort of thing? Mm-hmm. It's like, I think because you already have I think it makes the second game a bit more of a crapshoot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what annoys me is, so sure, you win the first game in a best of 3, you're up a game, and the loser gets to pick a counter. And I think that's fair, because the idea would be like, in an ideal world, you win the first game, they counter you counter them for the third game, so you win overall because you won that first game, which is like a result of a crapshoot in the first game, but that's sort of just how this works. You just sort of have to like predict the best thing. Mm-hmm. But right. by not having that set thing where the winner has to keep their deck, you take that like consolation prize advantage away from the loser, and it's just sort of I don't know, it just makes it a little bit more random in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Granted,
I think that's the drawback of not having like a sideboard. Like if we did have sideboards, it'd be weird for Hearthstone, and it would be very, very restricted. Like as in Magic, you have a 60-card deck and a 15-card sideboard. And in Hearthstone, there's, at least compared to standard format in Magic, in Hearthstone, there's really like a lot more decks that you have to worry about for the most part. And there's no way you could have a 15-card sideboard for a Hearthstone deck. That'd be absolutely insane, because then
it'd be a completely different deck.
You could be a Solar Flare deck. You could be like, here, I'm playing Zoo, and then I side out 15 of my cards, and then side in my whole sideboard, and now I'm just a handlock.
Right.
I get that, but like I think in order to rather than make like an extreme comparison like that, if you adjust it to be relative, so like what Magic is 60 cards, isn't it?
60 cards.
Per
60 card minimum.
Yeah. Okay, it's the same thing in Yu-Gi-Oh. No one good plays with more than 60 cards. Well, it's 40 in Yu-Gi-Oh. Like as soon as you hit like 62, everyone's like, you're a noob, because it's like. Anyway, back on the issue.
There's some situations where people have like, there's been pros that were like, oh, I have to run 66 because I need an extra like 4 mountains for my scape shift. Like really, really off the wall, like meta calls, and have done very, very well, but like most of the time it's 60 cards. You want to stick with 60.
Criticize unless they win everything. Anyway, yeah. So if we were to draw a comparison, we'd go. So obviously Hearthstone half the size, so you'd have half the sideboard of either 7 or 8 cards. Mm-hmm. And I think that's when you start to get a little bit more reasonable. But I think the problem with having a sideboard in Hearthstone is obviously the Blizzard philosophy was people are going to be playing multiple decks, and I like that. I hated that was one thing I hated about conventional CCGs for my many years playing Yu-Gi-Oh was like, you play one deck. You like if you had the bankroll, the money, the cards, you could play a couple of decks. Yeah. But for the most part, you built your deck. Your deck was your deck, and you'd have your sideboard. But I think that's what keeps Hearthstone interesting. Is you can play. You go to a tournament, and you're bringing 5 decks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's right.
That's something cool and unique about Hearthstone. I don't think it's a bad thing. I just think, both with in tournament play when you're I obviously you played way more tournaments than probably both of us combined.
Yeah.
But it seems what do they do now? Is it winner gets to does winner get to change decks? I was trying to say no. They don't. Okay.
Like the biggest like gap between some tournaments is, are you playing single limb or double limb? And obviously I would opt for, particularly like being in Australia, I opt for single limb tournaments, because it's like waiting around for a bracket is ridiculous in open tournaments, because there's so many people, and while people try to run it, it has inherent difficulties with doing that. But yeah, it's the standard online format is for like the opening round, right until you hit like I guess the quarters, maybe even the semis for a lot of things, is best of 3. Winner has to keep their deck, sort of thing.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. The inherent problem with that is like if you have like it's the first game is Zulok versus Handlock, and if Zulok wins, Handlock goes, okay, I'm just gonna go play Control Warrior, and then Zulok gets probably shit on because it's Control Warrior, and that's what it does. It most of the time poops on all of the aggro decks, and that's I feel like that's it's warranted a little bit, because the guy lost first game. I mean, he should maybe have an advantage the second game, but I haven't played obviously enough to have a good opinion on it, but I think maybe it could be a little bit. I don't know. I think it could be a little more fair for the guy playing aggro lock. I guess because it's a meta call for your first deck. You want to play a very, very fair deck for your first deck, I would assume, as opposed to playing a very niche deck like control or aggro.
Like a balanced, right?
Right.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but so this would come back to like the philosophy of Hearthstone in why, like, remember when Ben Bird was defending RNG in Hearthstone and like controlled RNG is to stop games resolving the way they always do, like. Yes. And so while you can make your counter picks and stuff, one of the things that keeps Hearthstone interesting is that while you can, as I was saying before, you can get those 4-5% edges, 40% of the time the other deck's going to win anyway, despite that edge. And I think that's sort of like where you draw the line as to what's fair in terms of, like, I guess mini-series is that the person... It really comes down to how you weight things. So I think obviously a victory in a best of 3 is weighted so heavily, and the player who lost the first game getting a choice as to what they play gives them like a chance. It gives you a leg to stand on, because it means you can, in theory, win the second game, and then you'll have a crapshoot as to who wins the third game based on their counter pick.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. One of the formats I played a few times was decks weren't eliminated, so you could, like, I did this frequently. I was pretty, as I was saying to you earlier, Mike, it's like when the season I made, like, Legend, I was playing Zoo, and I would always feel like I was like a 70% favorite to win the game.
Yeah.
So these tournaments, I just take Zoo in a best of 3, and like I'd play against a hunter, and they'd be like, "Nah, I can do this," and go like and reverse sweep them. And it's just like that was kind of interesting, but like I guess that's sort of regulation. Having too many regulating factors in open tournaments will be hard, and it just like leave people butthurt, I guess, if people cheat and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then you lead to get to all these disputes where it's important, but it's not that, in the grand scheme of things, it's not that important. So having these open rules is just for, like, I guess, better functionality. It's in the grand scheme of things, I think over a huge amount of tournaments, the better player will win generally. Like this like advantage that's sort of won or lost debate based on what side you want to debate for.
Yeah.
The better player is going to win in the long run.
Right.
Yeah. I think it kind of sounds slightly unfair, but it probably isn't really. I have a couple concerns, but they're probably moot.
What are your concerns? More so than what you
the
just
unfairness. It just kind of scares me that if you win, you get slightly punished, just a little bit, because you don't get to counter.
Right.
But I feel like
you won, Tom. You won. You one more win, and you have eliminated this guy. He's gonna go home. Just cry.
No, I agree. I'm being an asshole, kind of. I want to win always,
The rich get richer.
Well, I mean, and I think we're getting off a little bit of track, but I think the big thing, and people are trying to play around the different tournament, I guess, options that they have. Like, I know you, Matt, watched a little bit of the Pinnacle too. They've got the coup system, where they can, where each player gets an opportunity to can't just go ahead and cancel out a deck, which I know some of the other tournaments do the same thing.
Is that where you can? Okay, I remember someone got screwed over with it.
Yeah, during the mulligan phase, a player can opt to coup or basically get rid of their opponent's deck. Yeah, so they have to go into the next one. So basically, everyone brings 4 decks to the bracket, I guess.
Can they only coup once?
Yes, you only get the coup once. Each player gets a once, but that doesn't really answer the problem of, all right, I won the first game, now I get countered, and I think that's one of the big, really, I guess that's the only criticism a lot of people have for the current official, quote unquote tournament system right now. I don't know. It's kind of if you do have the option to change out as a winner to change out your deck. Does that add strategy at all? Because you don't know what you're going to play up against necessarily, if you do.
Well, that's the thing is it comes down to, you can draw the comparison to, I guess, poker is like, it's on the first level, it's about what cards I have. If I have 2 aces, then it's not really going to matter what my opponent has. Mm-hmm. But then in the second level is like, what do I think he has versus my aces? And the third level is sort of like, what do I think he thinks that I have? It's sort of like, that's what it really becomes. It sort of becomes about thinking about the likelihood of what they're going to pick and then weighing that up against should you counter pick it or not. So if I play Zoo in the first game and win and he is going to pick Control Warrior, do I then switch to Control Warrior's counter if I'm available, if I'm able to, or do I just... Yeah, it sort of becomes like it becomes this guessing games, which arguably introduces more RNG and like less skill than the sort of like game 1 counter, game 2 counter sort of thing.
Right. Well, I think we definitely want to come back to this, especially as the next couple of weeks. Me and you, Matt, we talked a little bit about kind of how the WCS is going to play out and how those are determined. So I want to talk about that. Maybe not this week, but definitely want to talk about that. I guess, the only other class I really want to talk about was Druid. I know we already talked basically Ramp Druid. I have seen some Mill Druid, though. That's kind of gone away. It's not super... I don't want to say it's not competitive. It's just not very...
I'd feel safe saying it's not competitive.
Yeah.
I would be like fine people quoting me saying I said it wasn't competitive.
I mean, you'll win games playing it. It's a perfectly fine deck. I just don't... Yeah. It's not consistent enough, I don't think, for ladder. Like
Fatigue Mage, which like as it is, we're getting into like tier 2, tier 3 decks.
Yeah.
Like Fatigue Mage is definitely, like, if you want to go with a milling strategy, I think it's pretty good. Very, from what I've seen, very, very expensive dust-wise. But I haven't played it, but I feel like it's it too, being the fact that it banks on, really, really late game kind of control-y mill deck. It's within itself slightly inconsistent. Because you have to make sure you stall, and like Cone of Cold, a lot of people run Frost Nova, Echo of Medivh, Ice Blocks, Blizzard Flame Strike, and then to reset a lot of things, you have Alexstrasza, and then the core things to mill them out and to make sure you get your cards, Cold Light Oracle, and then Death Lord, and then was a Duplicate to make sure you can play a bunch of them.
Yeah.
And that's like I think it's a really interesting deck. And it's not really like a great argument to say I don't want to play it because I don't like it, but
that's a perfectly fine argument, I think.
I personally don't like it. Like, it's not my play style, really. Like, if I want to play a control deck, I would play something like Control Warrior. Or Freeze Mage. Freeze Mage is also really, it's similar, but it's a weird play style with fatigue decks. Like, it's cool and all, and people may like it. It's just really weird to me.
Yeah.
So.
And that's one thing you learn, I guess, going in is when you start playing a few more tournaments, is you get forced into things like that. You have to play, and that's sort of what sets, I guess, the tournament pros and pros in general from general ladder players. Is ladder players, you can play something to death, and just that's like you said, you're a hunter player. You can play that all you want on ladder, and you'll do well because you know it inside and out. And needing to play these decks that you don't feel quite comfortable on, that's the next step. That's where you want to move to. Is like, because Freeze Mage had its place in the meta where it's sort of like, pretty good against anything that's not Control Warrior. I feel like I'm feeding you again. It's just like, Control Warrior shits on Freeze Mage. It's just like
Brazen freaking Control Warrior.
I feel
fueling
like
the fire.
Fatigue, maybe not necessarily Fatigue Mage, but Mill Druid, they do okay versus Control Warriors because you're still playing minions, you're still playing damage spells, and a lot of the early game and mid-ish game for Control Warrior is answering. Turn 4,
it's very reactive.
You can't play your 6-drop in turn 4, so it's kind of, you can control a little bit of the game, and I guess at that point you're hoping that you can mill away an Alexstrasza, away a Grommash, because if you can get rid of those, if you get rid of both those, games basically over. Basically against a Druid anyway. Freeze Mage not so much still, but you still have weapons to deal with and things like that. But
I think Control Warrior would probably normally win that matchup. If it knows what it's going up against.
Yes.
I don't even think you have to know. I think as long as you draw relatively on curve, like you get your shield blocks and then you play your whatchamacallit, the shield maidens. There's enough of a heal factor
to counteract the fatigue.
Well, and the thing is if versus like a ramp, I'm going to say ramp druid because ramp druid's getting things out early, but let's say a not lucky ramp druid. If you get to like turn 5 and neither of you've really played anything, you don't really, because I've played against a Mill Druid who's done this, where you don't really know what you're playing up against. It's turn 5, this person hasn't really played anything. Certainly hasn't played, Cold Light Oracle or anything like that. So I'm thinking, okay, this is just a ramp druid, hasn't pulled out, innervates or anything like that. And then all of a sudden, turn 6, the switch goes off, and so I'm saving cards, waiting. All right, I'm going to wait until I get my shield blocks so I can shield slam, my executes, on and on and on. And then all of a sudden, switch goes off and they start burning me. I think that's part of the skill too, is knowing what you're playing against, so that way you can best use your deck. Like a Mill Druid. I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait until his hand's full, until it's too late for him to start playing things.
But then I guess you need to have that consistent mill. I think that's sort of where it falls apart, is where it's really, I haven't played against it, but just nor played it, but just in terms of theory, the carded, you'd have to be able to burn faster than the card advantage you're giving.
Yes.
So I can imagine that being quite difficult.
Right.
As to why it's not played on a high level.
So like in the tier 2 decks we've covered the fatigue kind of decks. Freeze Mage is pretty well known. Mecha Mage is really cool. That's one of the cooler decks, and we'll talk about that later. Druid has a couple different types. Like obviously Ramp Druid is really played, and mid-range Druid isn't too far off, like similar playstyle to my understanding. I would say Face Hunter lands there. Handlock, if not bottom tier 1, is around top tier 2. But one deck
really?
I heard about. One deck I heard about. I haven't played, but I've heard about it through Tempo Storm and looking at a lot of other things. Oil Rogue. Have you guys seen that?
Yes.
Yeah, I haven't played against it. I don't really know what it does. I guess it's kind of like a burst shaman-y type deck for Rogue.
It's Miracle Rogue without the card draw, basically.
Yeah.
I think that was where Hosty reverse swept someone Zixo with in Deck Wars, where it was game 4 in the best of 7, and he pulled out I don't even know what the card is, but yeah, basically he just turned around and wrecked Zixo 4 games in a row. It was just Tinker's Sharp Sword Oil. Yeah.
That's I kind of feel like that deck's played more like a control. You got to be patient. It's patience. You got to wait till the end game.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Archetypally thinking, it looks to me like an aggro control deck. Like when you hear those words together, honestly, kind of makes no sense.
That's why I'm laughing.
But I mean, those things exist. Like speaking in like for a lot of terms translating over from Magic. Like there's a deck called Delver, which is it runs like a 1-drop, like 2 different 1-drops, 2 different 2-drops, and they all benefit from playing a bunch of spells. Mm-hmm. And so you have these really, really small, mana-efficient, really good cards, and then you play a bunch of different spells, and like a lot of them are draw spells, a lot of them are burn spells, and a lot of them are counter spells.
Yeah.
And from looking at this, I haven't played against it, but from looking at this deck, that's kind of what it looks like. I could be wrong, but I'm looking at some lists, and I see like South Sea Deckhand, which is really interesting. Yeah. And then you have Blood Mage Thalnos, and Cold White Oracle, Earthen Ring Farseer. Like not a lot of like early game stuff, like SI7 Agent. Yes, a lot of early game stuff. Not a lot of late game stuff, but like all of the things that are in this deck translate into late game, because you have things like Sprint late game to get you more cards. Like that is your main card draw, and then SI7 Agent is a solid card. Great body, and then if you combo it with anything, it's free damage, basically. Mm-hmm. Fan of Knives, great to counter aggro. Earthen Ring Farseer, great to counter aggro and to heal your minions if you have to. I don't really know the purpose of the deck, but to me that's what it looks like. It looks like this deck that's just like, I'm going to play some really solid creatures that do what they're supposed to do, and eventually kind of make it to late game if I have to, but kill them when I can. And that Tinker's Sharpsword Oil looks to me like that's the thing that closes out your games. That just looks insanely good.
Yeah, it was sort of like a 6 damage turnaround.
Yeah. And for people who do play Delver, or for people who play Magic and play Delver and understand what I'm talking about, I'm not comparing this deck to it. I'm just saying it looks like the same type of archetype to me.
Yeah.
So something where you can flick a switch.
Yeah.
And turn it on.
Right.
Well, I think the idea behind this was sort of like a big hit with, say, like an Assassin's Blade or something, where you already have like, the 3 damage on it, and then you suddenly spike to 6 plus the 3 on the creature, so you've like plus 6 to damage on the board.
Yeah,
becomes a little bit insane.
Well, and the combos that I've seen is you play something like an Assassin's Blade, you buff it up. It's something that's already been played a turn before that. Then you play your Tinker Sharpsword Oil. You attack. That buffs. Hopefully you have a minion on the board that buffs the minion. You go for face. So you hit your face with the minion. You hit your face with the weapon, and then you pull a Blade Flurry, and then you just you basically double your damage.
Yeah.
And
you just win the game.
Right. And so it's kind of the new Miracle Rogue. Except just without the card draw.
Without the storm kind of
without the miracle.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's Jesus is no longer turning water into wine. He's sort of like just putting some bubbles in it.
I guess it does look a little more bursty than like a kind of aggro-y control deck, but I think like with the mana curve of it, kind of aggressive. Like, I guess it could be aggressive, but I guess, flicking a switch, as you say, probably would be a better strategy for that. I don't know how, like, when I play Rogue, I obviously don't have a lot of cards to play really, really good Rogue decks. I never played Miracle Rogue. I played against it all the time.
Yeah.
But it looks fun, and it looks pretty, this Rogue deck, it looks really fun, and it looks relatively cheap. And I don't see really, like, I'm not sure what I'm trying to say. I don't know. I'm trying to say something. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Like,
I think I know.
In my brain.
It's hard to play. Like, it is. It takes. I've tried playing it, and done horrible with it. It's a different mindset than the typical decks I like to play, but it is. There's a little bit of skill into it because you got to be patient, and you have to know when to burn what cards when.
Right.
Yeah, it's a difficult deck. Anyone who plays it and does well with it, my hat's off to him because it's a pretty high skill cap deck.
Well, it was conceived by the world champion in conjunction with his former teammate now.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the version I was referring to in terms of the one with deck was I think it's called the Host Bat Rogue or something.
Okay.
Because it's like the love child of Firebat and Hosty.
Okay. Well, I guess that'll do it this week for Meta Anatomy. Hang out, and we'll be right back with Deck of the Week. DRC would like to thank Brainiacs for their support of this podcast. If you have a tech idea for improving your business's workflow, Brainiacs can provide a turnkey solution to specifically fit your needs. You can contact them at www.brainiux.com. Welcome back. This is Deck of the Week. I'm joined again with Matt Mushu Hill.
I am here.
And Ton Just Soup Jessup.
I am also here.
And so this week's Deck of the Week, very, very, very popular deck type. And there's different, and we'll talk about the different versions of it, but Mech Mage. I think the first time I saw this deck, I think Brian Kibler was watching one of his videos, or it was on stream. Basically, obviously, it involves a lot of mechs into the deck. But what makes it special are the mech cards that come in Mage. Some of the Snow Chugger is an amazing card. Such a good card.
A Noyotron?
You have to run that, basically.
Yeah.
There's a Twitter account called a Noyotron.
What? Is its tweets just hello?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
Wonderful!
I remember seeing Nimsh retweet it. I was just like, holy shit! It was getting like it was.
Oh, that Annoyatron.
So when the set first dropped, I figured when I first saw like mechs coming out, I figured, okay, well maybe we'll start actually seeing tribals. I didn't think they were going to be really good, but this deck is, in my opinion, it's really solid. I've seen people play it in Legend, like watch people's streams.
Yeah.
I couldn't get there. For one, I'm not that good, obviously, and for another, I don't think I have the right list probably. But it's, to me, obviously loads of fun, for me at least, because I love playing minions that easily and intuitively synergize with each other.
Yeah. And
then the burn aspect of it with Frostbolt and Fireball are solid cards for burn and solid cards for removal.
Yeah.
Goblin Blast Mage too.
That card is that's, I think, what makes Mage the best. Yeah, makes Mage the best class for mechs.
Rogue, I've seen do it. They played like
they do okay.
Rogue with mechs. I don't think it's bad. I prefer Mech Mage.
It's just you get that damage immediately. Like you don't have to wait to the end of turn. You immediately get it.
Its body is amazing.
Yeah,
like it's got a great body on its own for a 4-drop, and then 4 damage if you got a mech.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
To be fair, it's only really fair that they got the optimal
That is very true.
mech card when you have a little squiz at the old Flame Leviathan.
Yeah. Oh,
And it's just like, well,
wait.
it's nearly a card.
Oh, that's which if you had the chance or the choice between Flame Leviathan and Goldshire Footman, what would you pick?
Jesus,
I know. I know.
It's like, out of context, I think Leviathan is better because Footman's just a really bad one drop. But so I think that's an instance where the Flame Leviathan will win. For those of you playing at home, the Flame Leviathan is a 7 for 7/7. So there we go, right on the vanilla curve. With the comparison is drawn from War Golem, and so it has the effect when you draw this card. Deal 2 damage to all characters. So everything is getting burnt for 2 damage, and it's sort of
everything.
Everything is. It's like the Iron Juggernaut Warrior card, but like not good.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I don't like it, especially if you're playing a mech deck. Like, it's just.
It's bad.
You're an aggro deck. You don't want to be doing board wipeage type cards, and it's so RNG, and it's obviously you can only play one of because it's legendary, but when you draw it, it's all you don't want to have to be able to play it. You don't want to be playing an aggro deck and then out of nowhere just that's 2 damage that literally nobody cared about.
But yeah, no, I think we should stop talking about it. It's just not acknowledge its existence. It's just sort of like, maybe if we all sort of hope together
that arena, pick it and move on.
Yeah, for all the listeners, we brought it up just because of how bad it is, but it is not in the mech deck.
We were justifying the value that is Goblin Blast Mage.
Yes,
yes. So you got to keep it nice and even,
right? So Goblin Blast Mage, amazing card. Obviously, I mean, any mech deck you're going to play with Mech Warper,
right?
I mean, you've got to.
You want to start from the bottom of the curve, starting from 1 drops and go up?
We talk about basically what most of them have. So Clockwork Gnome is a
phenomenal 1 drop on its own.
1/2 for 1 that gives you a when it dies, a death rattle. It gives you a
spare part.
Thank you. I forgot the term. Spare parts. We'll come back to that because it comes into the end game. So spare part cards are very important in these decks. Cogmaster. Is a 1 drop. Was it a 2 for?
It's a 1. It's a
1
2
for 1, right? No, 1. It gets 1/1/2.
It's a 1/2, and then if you have a mech,
that's right. Yeah. So if you play a mech, it turns the Cogmaster into a 3/2. Mm-hmm. Some people run leper gnomes, so that's kind
of. I'm not sure how I feel about that.
I don't either. I've got 1.
I don't really care for it. Like, if you're really, really trying to be on the aggressive side, I can see it. I would not prefer to play it because, 1, it's not a mech, and you're probably going to have to take out a mech or something that synergizes with mechs in the deck. And it's like, it is an aggro deck. I don't want to take away from the fact that it's a very aggressive deck, but it's the way it curves out, it almost turns into a mid-range deck with the creatures it has.
Yeah.
Not to say that it is. I think it is, and I would classify it as an aggro deck. It just has, like, you have a couple 1 drops, you have a decent amount of 2 drops, you have a couple 3 drops, and then you get a lot of 4 drops and some higher drops.
The central theme is to, like, obviously manipulate that curve by using the Mech Warper. So I think the best game that I had in terms of this was going second, coining out the Mech Warper and getting 2 Clockwork Gnomes. So it's turn 1. Turn 1 for the second player to drop 3 cards. It's just like that. Huge. I think that's getting close to, like, the pinnacle of Mech Mage's unfairness.
Yeah.
I think it was
it's really
originally
to happen.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's like created by Strife Crow. I think he was the first one to, like, if he was probably wasn't the first one to slap the cards together from the pack, but he was the first one to make it work, I guess. The first one to sort of and I tried these sort of like Strife Co aggro thing, but I got slammed. I did not have a fun time, but that could possibly have been function of I realized I didn't have Antonitis, and being like sort of skimpy on money this week, I was like, I could buy packs and make Antonitis, but I was like, nah, I'll just sub it out for a Pyroblast. But then, as you brought up before, talking about the importance of the spare parts, and this is where they become important, in that you get all these one cost spells for from the spare parts that just turn fireballs, and that's also where I think the version I was trying, which was like an updated version of Strife Co's, it ran Mana Worms, so you get it's running at both ends of the curve. So at the bottom end, at the one early end of the curve, you can use your spare parts and bolster this Mana Worm, sort of like, I guess, a pseudo pre-nerf Undertaker.
Yeah, right.
And then at the other end, you have your Antonitis to just blow them to pieces. And I think had I had Antonitis, I may have gone better, because there was a few times I've written a couple of notes from a couple of games where it's like I was playing against Handlock, and I couldn't. I think it's pretty close to a pretty good, like an awesome start, but I just couldn't finish it. So if I had like Antonitis into say 2 fireballs, it would have been all right.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and let me go through just some of the main minions real quick, because I think we're getting to kind of what the deck works. But so
that's theory.
You're running a Noyotron as a 1/2 for 2. With Taunt and Divine Shield.
So good.
Yeah, I mean,
I love. Before I don't want to stall too far, but I want to commend whoever the hell made that card. It's so phenomenal. Like, everything about that card is perfect.
It's pure troll.
Its name goes with everything, but Taunt and Divine Shield, already obnoxious.
Yeah.
It's one power, so it's just gonna like poke you, and it's 2 toughness, so you can't kill it with, you
can't ping it. Yeah,
right. You can't ping it to get rid of it, and you have to. It's so good. I love it so much. Like when it first came out, and my brother-in-law and I were doing an arena. We saw it, and we were like, "That's a decent card. We'll play it." And then we dropped it and played it, and we heard it, and we were like, "That is the most obnoxious thing ever." And then we swung with it. And we just kept picking it up and putting it down and picking it up and putting it down just to listen to the sound over and over again.
Hello!
It was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and we were maybe slightly inebriated, and it was on the floor, tears. So funny. Oh, I love it.
That's the Noyotron, of course.
Love it.
Next card, Mech Warper. Is a 2/3 for 2. Your mechs cost 1 less. Very important, especially for the early game. That card can get you. That basically turns this deck.
That's the engine, really.
Yeah, I mean, it can turn it from kind of a mid-rangey deck into an aggro deck all on its own.
Everything gets easier.
Yeah, it's a solid card. Now,
if you're playing up against this deck and you see a Mech Warper, it's so beyond worth the Frostbolt or the Rasp.
The coin Frostbolt.
Even a Swipe or whatever you have, like, do it.
That is the pre-nerf Undertaker in this deck.
Oh, yeah.
The Mech Warper, definitely.
Yeah.
So, basically talked about the 1 and 2 drops. 3 drops are a little split, but...
Snow Chugger, by the way.
Yes, we've got Snow Chugger.
We went over that.
Yeah. 3 drops. So, different people are going to argue, but... You'll get Harvest Golem is a solid pick. It's a 2/3 for 2 that spawns another 2/1. It's a Death Rattle.
We've seen that in a lot of different aggro decks.
Yeah, it's a solid. I mean, Shaman plays it a lot. It's just a solid card.
Aggro Lock, Lock, whatever plays that.
Every deck ever at some point has played it.
I think the main thing about it is its resilience. It's like it's not like phenomenal body, but it's gonna stay around for a while.
Right.
I believe the term is sticky.
Yeah.
It's a very sticky minion.
If it's control meta heavy, kind of like it is right now, that is one of the best. If you have to choose between 3 drops, like some of the other ones I'm going to present, that's definitely one you want to put in. Next one, Spider Tank. It's a 3/4 for 3, just plain mech. Great stats. I think its health and its attack. I mean, obviously you can get rid of 2/3s really easy. 2 for 1 very easily with this card. It does die quicker, if that's even the right term, to control decks. Like if you're playing against Troll Warrior, obviously Death Bite will get rid of it, a swipe. So if it's better against aggro, in my opinion, against the aggro meta.
It's not like it doesn't have any amazing abilities. It's not like a great, fantastic, you have to run this all the time card.
Yeah.
But we don't really have a lot of 3-drop mechs, and it's really the best thing that we got, and you can't complain about it.
No,
it's pretty damn good.
It's essentially the 3-drop Yeti. It's what it is. It's like
absolutely,
It's for those who need a reference point, minus 1 cost off a Yeti, then you get a spider tank.
Right. Next card, Tinkertown Technician.
So
card is amazing. It's a 3 for 3, and if you have a mech on the board, it gains 1/1. The Tinkertown Technician gains 1/1, not the mech, and you get a spare part in your hand. So another spare part draw. If you don't, I'm not even going to talk about if you don't have a mech on the board, because generally you're always going to have a mech on the board. So basically you're paying 3 for a 4/4 and a spare part.
If you don't have a mech on the board, you're probably going to lose. And
right.
Playing the Tinker, and you probably just have to play the Tinkertown Technician naked.
Yeah, I mean, if it's end game and you're top decking, obviously you got to play what you got to play. But if you get this early and play it on curve, it is amazing.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's just super unfair because it's like it's resilient to the only sort of I guess removal it loses out to when buffed is you're running into, say, like a true silver champion or a death bite.
Yeah,
that's all you're really losing out on if your opponent's going to turn 4.
Yeah,
and even then it's like a pretty fair trade. They're taking 4 damage for it. Mm-hmm. And I guess the even better thing about it is going into playing it when your opponent's going to turn 4 is the likelihood is you're going to have you have to have other mechs. So you usually have at the very minimum 1. Most of the time, I think you'll have 2 by this point. And so it's sort of like it's just a tempo boost, I guess, because it's such a cool threat.
Yeah.
It's a nice threat.
And I mean, even if they do play a Death Spite or a what was the Paladin weapon? I'm having a brain
True
fart.
Silver Champion.
Thank you, True Silver Champion. If they're playing that on turn 4, that means they're not playing a minion on turn 4.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's a tempo boost.
It's not the worst thing in the world, especially as I continue down the list, because you're just gonna be playing bigger minions as we go down.
It's a solid 1-for-1, honestly.
Yeah. We talked about the Goblin Blast Mage already. I guess the next big card is gonna be Mechanical Yeti, a 4/5 for 4. Death Rattle, give each player a spare part.
Just like the Chillwind Yeti, except it's a mech. And
I was going to say, does this feel like no one would ever play Chillwind Yeti ever again?
Yeah, I guess
almost.
it's just... I guess
it's like this...
I guess it depends on what you think your opponent's playing, because you are giving them a spare part, which I guess you're, in theory, only giving them half a card. If you're playing against something like a Miracle Rogue, something like that where they use a lot of spells, and they get an advantage from that. Maybe you don't want to, but other than that, I agree with you. I don't really think there's any reason not to play this.
But that's like just on a side tangent. I think that's something about card games in general is the original sets. You have like these bad cards that eventually become superseded, and that's just the life of things.
Yeah, power creep. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, back on topic.
Yeah.
The piloted Shredder. I think that's relatively common for a 4-drop in this deck.
And that was the next one. Yes, piloted Shredder.
It's so fun to play too. It's basically your 4-drop Harvest Golem almost. It's got the resilience. It's sticky. It's a really good body for what you pay for it. And honestly, I've won off of just getting really random. The random 2-drops you get from it, and very rarely do you get.
I've seen that happen. Yeah.
Roll high. That's like you've rolled the hard 6 if you get a Doomsayer, unless of course it kills all your shit.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So it's a 4/3 for 4. It's a mech, and Death Rattle summon a random 2-cost minion. So that can be, I'm pretty sure anything in the 2 costs, any other class even, even legendaries. So it's
You can roll Thalanos.
Freaking Millhouse Mana Storm.
Yep.
Yeah, that works.
That's the dream drop right there.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. So I mean, that's really it for. Well, let's go ahead and talk about late game. So most mech mages. Go ahead.
I don't mean to usurp you. Real quick, a lot of lists, mine including, because I'm cool, run a one of Defender of Argus.
Yes, I run one too. I didn't know if we should bring it up, but at least one of.
It's actually like it sounds weird, but it's honestly really relevant.
Yeah,
and
I think so.
We're talking about because you don't have any taunts in this deck besides Inoyotron.
Yeah,
and it buffs your creatures, and it's like you run it like that. Being run in Zoolock is really really good.
Yes,
that being run in Handlock is really really good, and this deck. Is absolutely no exception. It's a really like Defender of Argus is a weird card on its own, but in this sort of deck, it makes it even weirder. But it's so cool. Like
well,
it wins games. Honest to God,
I think it gives you the ability to say buff your piloted shredder so you can run through a sludge belcher.
Right. And being in the deck where it's a lot about trading, it's really, really phenomenal.
Yeah.
It allows you to trade, or it allows you to set up trades for your opponent to where it makes it worse for them.
Yeah.
And that's... It doesn't synergize well with the overall scheme of the deck, but it synergizes well with the deck in that it works with the archetype.
Yeah, you don't use it for the body. You really just use it for the stat buffs.
Right.
Once upon a time, you used it for the body.
You did, yes.
Right.
Yes, you did.
When it was a 3/3.
Right.
But yeah, it's just good. It's like one of those cards. It's like it's like your Sludge Belcher. It's like anything you can fit it into anything because there's no downside to dropping an Argus on 4.
No.
In between 2 Clockwork Gnomes, in between 2 Inoyotrons, in between anything.
Yeah. So I mean that's kind of your basics. There's like we talked about Leper Gnome. You can kind of swap in and out for different cards depending on what the meta dictates or what you may want to play. But I guess the last card that I would say is pretty important and why we talked so much about spare parts being important is Archmage Antonidas. As a 5/7 for 7. Text reads: whenever you cast a spell, add Fireball spell to your hand. So that includes coin. That includes any spare parts. You play it and you get a Fireball back. If you play a Fireball, you get a Fireball back. It is just a dangerous card, and that's what allows you to really have a late game.
I've seen people play Gazlo in the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with its play. I think if you play Gazlo, it's actually more of a kind of control-y kind of thing because you'll be trading more with your minions. So you can play more with Gazlo. But I kind of feel like you would rather play Antonidas because it closes out games just ridiculously quick.
Yes.
And on top of that, it's a legendary that doesn't get hit by BGH, which is nice. A really big one.
Yeah.
So I was gonna say I think Gazlo would be like competitive if it was a 5-drop. 6 just feels like
I think it's too much.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's like I think I'm opting for a 4-drop and a hero ability.
Yeah, right.
It's
So the idea is, like you were saying, Matt. Some people will run Mana Worms in their deck, which is a 1/3 for 1. Whenever you play a spell, gain 1 attack. Some people will play those in their Mech Mage deck and use their spare parts to kind of buff that up. But otherwise, you generally want to save those until you can play your Archmage. That way you can close out the game just fireballing face.
Just destroying anything in your path, and like you might get slowed down a turn if you have to blow up, say, a Sludge Belcher or maybe even a Dr. Boom or something.
Right.
Yeah. That covers pretty much most of the pretty much the entire core of the deck.
I think that's
Fireballs
the core,
and Frostbolts.
Yeah,
like that also.
For spells, definitely Frostbolts for kind of control, and Fireballs for either face or control. Yeah.
I also run a 1 of Azure Drake for just a nice body, nice cantrip, and it buffs your Fireballs. I also run Lotheb, which is pretty decent in any aggro mid-rangey deck. It protects your minions and it stifles through and your opponent's plans. I don't have an Antonidas, so right now I'm running Dr. Boom, which it's a really good card. Like if you throw it in any mid-range deck, you pretty much almost always make the deck better.
It doesn't make the deck better as much as it already is a good card, so it makes the deck better.
Right,
yeah.
Thank you. Right.
Yeah.
And I don't have Antonidas, so I can't run that really, really nice synergistic beat you in the face at the end kind of win. But Dr. Boom just kind of solidifies that spot.
It gives you the ability to have late game.
Right, right.
Yeah. Some of the other ones I've seen, and I know I'm going to get some raised eyebrows, but I watched Brian Kibler play this Fell Reaver, which is an 8/8 for 5 mech. Text reads,
my eyebrows are raised right now. It's just like you can't see it, but my face is like stunned in this sort of disbelief. It's like, really?
If you don't know this card, if I said 8/8 for 5, you're like, oh, that's really great. 8 tech, 8 health for 5. The text reads, whenever your opponent plays a card, discard the top 3 decks from your 3 cards from your deck. So that immediately you're like, no. The thing is if you get this out early, I've won plenty of games just with this card alone. Like, didn't even need Archmage, didn't need Yetis, didn't need Fireballs, didn't need any of that. I think it is kind of YOLO.
I'm gonna have to see like video evidence of you winning the game with Fell Reaver in order to believe you.
I would consider it controlled YOLO. Because if you play
the card in my deck,
right, if you play it on turn 5, immediately if you play against it, you're like, oh, I'm gonna mill my opponent's deck. That is a trap. That is a big trap if it's early, because you only have 5 mana to play, so you're just gonna burn cards. And I'm gonna throw Wrath here or something there, and not really use my cards effectively to try to burn my opponent's cards. I've won plenty times just on that. So I think at competitive, super competitive levels, that is not going to work because people are going to see through it. But if you can get out early enough, that's an 8/8 on turn 5. I mean, that's or cornered on turn 4. It's still strong. I don't know. I don't think I would normally play it, but I've had decent success with it.
I can understand, like, if you're coining it out on turn 4 or even on turn 5, if it's one of those, it's like the handlock thing. If they don't have an answer, then GG.
Right.
But it's like, particularly in this matter, I don't think it'd be feasible because you're already playing, like, as we had this discussion earlier today, like the Dr. Boom thing, it's like everyone's running 1, if not 2 BGHs, and you lose. What would resolve first? If I BGH your Fell Reaver, do you still lose the 3 cards?
Yes.
It's like, well, it's look at that in terms of value, and you're bankrupt.
And this, this was played and I wouldn't say popular, but played out maybe like a month ago, longer. So this was maybe even longer than that. So this is before everyone was running BGH, because nowadays everyone's turn 5. Okay, I let's say have coin. My opponent plays a Fell Reaver. Okay, I'm going to play a coin. I'm going to play something. Yeah, I'm going to play BGH. So there's 3 mana out the door. Now what else can I play? So there's 2 cards. There's 6 cards out. I'm going to try to play 3 at least. I'm going to burn 9 cards for my opponent and get rid of the Fell Reaver. I'm not going to say it's going to work now. If the meta changes, I'll just say this. I think this is the only time I've actually seen a Fell Reaver work. I haven't seen it work anywhere else. I can't even think of anywhere else where it might work. Discarding is just such a big deal in this game.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing.
More so in Arena, it would hurt too. Like getting a Fell Reaver in Arena is much more hurtful than it is in Constructed. Like, I think it has more of a play in Constructed than it does in Arena. And in a deck like this where you can close out with Archmage Antonidas or Dr. Boom in my case, because I'm really cheap and don't have that.
Yeah.
But it's got slots in this deck. Like, it's not like it's unwelcome. it's a gamble though within itself.
Yes.
I think.
I'm
Kind of hard. I would also assume, because I also haven't played it. I would also assume that it's pretty difficult to play with too, because you'd have to play it at the right time, and you'll want to either close out with it or make sure you trade very, very well into minions with it, and kill it quickly so that they don't mill you out too far.
I wouldn't. So here's the thing. I brought it up just because I thought it was really interesting. I do not recommend playing it right now.
We do not condone the use of Fel Reavers. We here at Death Rattle Crew, we are not liable for any games lost based on the premise of Fel Reaver.
Do not send us emails or videos of your rage. We don't want it. You have been warned. I just want to bring up how interesting I thought that was, and that it actually worked in this deck.
For Brian Kibler.
For that time period before the meta changed.
Yeah.
Before everyone realized.
Yes.
But no. Just something else on the good old Mech Mage as breaking news. Just hours before this recording, the young world champion Firebat has reached rank 2 in Legend, and posted a picture where it looks like he's playing some form of Mech Mage. There's an Alexstrasza in there. So despite how badly I did, and in relative to you guys, I don't know how well you guys did with the Mech Mage, Mr. World Champion is doing quite well with it, apparently.
with Alexstrasza on board.
Yeah. Well, I suppose there'd be some. This is assuming it's Mech Mage, and he didn't, because like the comment was from 2002 in a day, and he said stopping to let his friend hold spot number 1. So I don't know. Obviously, he's doing something we're not.
Well, and I can definitely see why the Alexstrasza is a good choice, especially now.
Synergy with the Antonidas.
Yeah, I mean that, and I mean obviously you can only play it. You're going to play your Alexstrasza, and then your turn's done. As far as playing cards, but especially with all the taunts that we see right now, that busts you through those taunts. Or if you have minions on the board, you're still able to do damage and bust through taunts. But like you were saying, Matt, play that, and then next turn do your Archmage Antonidas and seal the deal. If you don't already have 2 fireballs in your hand,
if you haven't already won,
right, you
can do it.
It's kind of a guarantee. Or if you're playing against a super aggro deck and you've kind of fizzled them out, then you can heal yourself with it. So it's a very adaptive card. I like Alexstrasza a lot.
Yeah, and it's one of the if you have to if you have a lot of dust and you want to make a legendary and you're not sure what, Dr. Boom's a good one, and Alexstrasza are both they're played in so many decks right now. They're just so good.
Yeah.
In a lot of decks, archetypes in a lot of situations too. So,
I would say Dr. Boom over Strata.
I wouldn't disagrey. I feel like Alexstrasza is, although it is played in a lot of different decks, it's played in the more top tier, very expensive decks within itself. Dr. Boom, obviously, but yeah, just showing the strength of Alexstrasza right now. It's can either completely blow out your opponent. Like in the case of Freeze Mage, if it has to, or like in the case of, for example, Control Warrior, can set you up from 1 health to 15, because it sets you to 15 health. So
right.
I can see how he would play it in Mech Mage, though. I think what he would just do is be playing kind of a mid-rangey deck where he just uses his creatures to trade a lot, and then when it comes down to it, he slams down Alexstrasza and then swings in the face, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And then as an alternate condition can heal himself with that. That's really interesting, though. I would like to mess with that if I ever get Alexstrasza.
Yeah, I haven't played with Alexstrasza in a mech deck yet. The only other one that I've played, I think Sneed's Old Shredder could do well. Not in place of Archmage, I don't think. But as take out Fel Reaver and put it in Old Sneed's or Sneed's Old Shredder.
I think we've gone from terrible to slightly less bad.
I'm not even going to bring up the Fel Reaver anymore.
Yeah. The problem with the Sneeds, though, I think it's it's sort of it's a bit too slow in this deck, I think. Because you'd be playing it instead of what Alex.
It's definitely a late game only, but then it's kind of, would you rather have the Alex Straza benefit over the...
I'll tell you what, you might be able to play Shredder, Sneed's Shredder, have them kill it, and then have Alex Straza pop out, or even maybe a second Antonidas.
Yeah, right.
But for like the 1 in like 30 times that'll happen.
And I've seen Kel'Thuzad played in some decks too.
I can understand that.
That's a pretty strong.
I can understand that. I don't think.
I think you'd have to. I think you'd want to play that instead of Antonidas, and you'd have a slightly like latter curve, because then you'd be bringing back these bigger minions.
You're reliant more on your minions than you are finishing it off with like a fireball or I guess that's all meta dependent, though. You know, would you rather have board control or spell control?
And then with the meta, like talking earlier, with things like Kezon Mystic, if you're playing up against a lot of Secret Mage and Hunters and stuff, you could take out, like, I have a one of Defender of Argus and a one of Azure Drake. Depending on what the meta would call for, I could take out one of those for a Kezon Mystic. I had a really, really good example, and I can't remember it, of...
this awesome card.
Yeah, BGH. You could also take out Defender of Argus or Azure Drake and use BGH if you're playing up against a lot of Handlock or Ramp Druid, Ramp Druid, Mid-Range Druid, Mid-Range Pally, Control Warrior, like bigger decks. So...
Yeah. And that's something you might consider, especially with the meta now. Like we talked about, 2 Cog Masters are kind of core. Maybe you only play 1 and put in something else so you can have that extra BGH, or if there's something else that you feel like the meta dictates that you need. Because the Cog Master's kind of a get ahead quick kind of card. It dies way too easy late game, but maybe you don't need more than 1. It just depends. I think it's solid in the deck, but again, like we said, as the meta changes, your curve's going to change a little bit too.
Mm-hmm. And it's absolutely not bad, but encouraged to, like, when you go through different ranks, like once you get from 20 to 15, and then from 15 to 10, and then 10 to 5, change the deck to suit the meta whenever you can.
Yes, you have to.
You absolutely do.
You cannot build a deck and then just expect to go to Legend with it through the month. You're gonna have to adapt it.
Oh, I think you can. I think you just have to be prepared to play.
It's physical.
A lot of games. I think it's very possible to play the same deck for the entire month
without changing out anything.
Without changing anything, you might be like it might be the smarter decision to change things out. But I think I don't think it's correct to say you have to do it. Because you can just play enough games, so there's enough games where you are playing in a situation where you have a favorable win. And if the idea being that if you have if you're winning that many games anyway, then your deck is good enough against most of the enough of the field to get you above that 50% win ratio.
That is true. So you don't have to.
Well, that was definitely a very nitpicky point, but yeah, it's.
I guess at that point, if you are paying attention to percentages, though, you know what you have and you know what you're playing against.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that is true. If you're confident enough and you know what the numbers are, you don't have to. That's it.
Blizzard aren't holding a gun to your head.
No, not at all. We think.
Sideboard or die sort of thing.
That's right. Anything else? Have you guys seen any other builds or versions of this deck?
I mean, the stock list, not really. I think it's really intuitive to make, honestly, because when I think it was at the beginning of this month, I came upon it slightly organically. I'd like to say it's obviously hard to prove, but I was just playing around and saw some people doing some things with mechs, and I was like, I looked at the mech like the mage mech cards, and I was like, this looks cool. So I made my own really, really, really rough list. And some people are going the very, very aggressive route with Jeeves.
Yes, I've seen that.
Yeah, Jeeves is played a little bit. I like the mid-range version better. You don't have to rely on throwing your hand out because that's kind of bad play. You never want to really overextend too much. And Micro Machine, some people play. It's a good budget answer. Like if you don't have the dust to make other things. But overall, from playtesting this deck a lot, there's just better cards. Like a Noyotron, Mech Warper, Snow Chugger, all has 2 ofs, can fill up your your 2 drops slots, and then you have 2 Frostbolts. So that's enough, honestly.
Yeah, you can get clogged pretty easy if you try to play everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's sort of like where you can start to cut things like Cogmaster. Where it's sort of it's good, but it doesn't have any value beyond that one turn where it lives.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and I guess that's what you generally want a mulligan for are your Clockwork Gnomes and your Cogmasters, and your Mech Warpers. Yeah, depending maybe your Snow Chuggers.
Mech Warper.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that would be number 1. Is definitely a Mech Warper. If you're playing against Warriors,
two Mech Warpers.
Yeah. Play everything for free. So that's Mech Mage for this week. We'll be right back. And that's our show for this week. We want to hear from you. You can email us at mail@deathrattlecrew.com. Any questions, comments, anything. We want to hear from you. Let us know. You can reach us at Twitter at DeathRattleCrew. Our website is www.deathrattlecrew.com. Find us on YouTube at Death Rattle Crew, and Twitch, once we start streaming live, that'll be Death Rattle Crew as well. Everything's Death Rattle Crew. Yes, I know. Anyway, look forward to seeing you guys next week. Until next time, welcome to the crew.